Hi everyone, welcome back. You're watching The Money Show on ET now. We just had a discussion with Mr. Raj Khosla of My Money Mantra to talk about what are the different announcements by the RBI that essentially, would affect your wallet in different ways. But let's talk about a development that took place earlier last month, towards the end of the month, and that is a new Consumer Protection Act. By the way, this new Consumer Protection Act is replacing a 30-year-old one which came in roughly about 1986. So it'll definitely be very interesting to watch as to what this new Consumer Protection Act entails and how has it essentially ensured that it includes all the new developments that have taken place since 1986 in the way, of course, customers shop in today's date and age. And yes, I am talking about e-commerce being a significant chunk of that bit. So let's bring on board Mr. Anay Shukla, the managing partner of Arogya Legal, to talk about the same. Mr. Shukla, many thanks for joining us on the Money Show today to talk about the Consumer Protection Act. So like I said, it's a 30-year-old act that is now being replaced. So clearly for the new act, it had its task cut out. It had to keep up with the way today customers like you and I shop, the mode of our shopping as well has changed so much. So how do you think this new Consumer Protection Act ensures that our interests are protected even in the new modes of shopping?
First of all, thank you for having me on the show. You're absolutely right. I think the new consumer protection law is for the new generation of consumers. And I think that the government has done a very good job in bringing in this new law. There are three buckets in which I would like to categorize the new developments that we are going to see under this new law. The first and foremost of which is how have they tried to regulate e-commerce, right? The e-commerce services today, the way they are operating, don't really have a lot of regulations surrounding them from a consumer protection perspective. But going forward, there are several new things that consumers are going to see, starting from the way in which products are displayed, the way in which details regarding grievance officers are displayed, the way in which your exchange information is supposed to be displayed, your country of origin is supposed to be displayed, and so on and so forth. So I think the biggest development, honestly, for the consumers under the new consumer protection law is the way in which it regulates e-commerce transactions. I said there are three buckets. The other two buckets are the establishment of a new regulator, a consumer protection watchdog, which is going to oversee whether any misleading advertisements are being carried out or whether any unfair trade practices are being carried out, and so on and so forth. And it is going to investigate those. So there was a time when if you and I, any of us, or any customer for that matter, was agreed he had to go to consumer court and then file a complaint and so on and so forth. That's not going to happen. There is going to be a consumer watchdog which will have the ability to investigate itself and come to a conclusion. The third thing, obviously, because 30 years have passed since the old law, there is a clear push in terms of making it easy for consumers to file consumer complaints in consumer courts, right? So there has been a significant push from the side of the government to make it very, very simple for consumers themselves to go and approach consumer forums and get whatever justice they deserve against, let's say, a defective product or a deficient service. So these are the three big buckets in which I see the developments.
Okay, so largely three key takeaways. One is that the biggest development is that now, the court is going to regulate the way e-commerce conducts their transaction, different online platforms conduct their transaction. Secondly, I think it will be a bit more proactive because they've established a consumer protection watchdog. So while earlier a consumer had to go, to the forum, to the court and say that, okay, look, listen, this product does not do what it claims, or, this advertisement is misleading or it's harmful, etc., etc. Today, we are hoping that this consumer protection watchdog will proactively pull up such manufacturers, such producers, such distributors, and ensure that no such harmful product is being pushed. And finally, it's become easier for the customer themselves now to file a complaint in the consumer courts. They can approach the forum now against any product or a manufacturer if they feel that it has not met up to its standards, among many other things. So these are largely the three things. I just want to understand, let's take all of these points one by one. First up, on the e-commerce bit. Obviously today, and especially amidst this lockdown, right, e-commerce transactions have surged significantly, but I think all of us have unfortunately had one sour incident that has taken place if we've shopped online. So today, Anay, if I'm not happy maybe with the product that I have got, or if I feel that it's defected, but I'm not being able to get any, my complaint is not getting resolved by the e-commerce company. What are the options? I mean, how easy? I think your third point also said that it's very easy for them to approach the consumer court. So how easy is it for me to approach the consumer court? Because to be honest, my purchases may not be that big either, right? So how easy is it then for me to approach the consumer court?
Take a step back, and before we actually go to consumer court, let's see at what the government is trying to do with regulating the e-commerce websites and e-commerce providers, right? E-commerce service providers. So today, whatever we see as content to make a purchase decision is regulated. So there is a requirement for these websites who either sell these products directly or are marketplaces where sellers can list their products and sell products directly. There is a requirement to make sure that the information that is supplied is accurate. Okay, that's number one. This was not the case earlier, or was not the case earlier in a way that it is today, where there is a consequence attached to a non-compliance. Okay. Second, it is not just about being accurate in terms of providing information. It is also about providing complete information, right? So you have to not just say that this is the product and this is why it is accurate. You have to also say that what are the other terms and conditions attached with buying this product. So for example, something which everybody has experienced, is a refund available, let's say, for a purchase decision, right? Is an exchange available for a purchase decision or not? And so on and so forth. So all those things which you and I agree are key terms for making any purchase decision on e-commerce is something
Okay, all right. I think we've just had some issue with Anay Shukla's feed. We'll just try and sort of reconnect with him. Okay, we managed to get Anay Shukla back. Anay, continue making your point.
Right. So I was saying that there's a third thing that has also the government has also tried to do. It has made these e-commerce players responsible to appoint what is called as a grievance officer. So you and I as consumers don't have to go to a court of law or a consumer forum or before the consumer watchdog, right? You and I can actually raise a complaint as a formal process before these e-commerce players, and there is a timeline put, which is 30 days within which these e-commerce companies have to resolve your complaint. Now, this is a good mechanism because it saves everybody's time, right? It saves your time, it saves the court's time, it saves a lot of money for everybody, and the complaint is redressed. So the government has tried its best through this law to regulate e-commerce, and the reality is that everybody these days, with the current situation going on, is shopping online. So this is something which was a requirement of the day. Now, the question that you had originally put to me was that what has the government done to make it easier for consumers to go and file consumer cases, right, before these consumer forums? I think the very simple answer to this question is that they have made it. They have given an option to the consumers to file the cases themselves, right? To file a simple complaint in a simple form themselves, which always existed, but now you can file it online. So there is a way in which you can file it online. The requirement to engage a lawyer was always because lawyers were supposed to advance arguments during hearings, right? Now, what the current law does is it says that you look at the documents, which is your affidavits and other documentary evidence, whatever is provided, and take a decision. So to that extent, it is not required that you engage a lawyer per se. If you have sufficient information in terms of documentation which is available in front of you, you can go ahead and file a complaint and have a decision. You don't have to necessarily stand before a court and argue, which is essentially why lawyers were typically engaged. Not only the reason why, but one of the key reasons why a lot of people prefer to engage lawyers. The third thing, what makes life of a consumer easier under the consumer protection law is that earlier there was a limit of 20 lakhs with district consumer forums, which was in every city or in every sort of jurisdiction. There was a consumer forum where you could go and file a case, let's say, against a defective good or a deficient service that you received and so on and so forth. But if you had to claim a compensation, that the limit was 20 lakhs. Now that limit has been increased to 1 crore, right? So that earlier, if that compensation claim exceeded 20 lakhs, you had to go to the next level, which was the state commission. And that was never in the same city. So you had to travel and you had to do a lot of, so it took a lot of effort actually to go and actually have a compensation claim which exceeded 20 lakhs. This made people make claims which were less than 20 lakhs, even though they felt they deserved more, right? Because of the convenience. Now, what has happened is that this limit has gone up to 1 crore, right? So I think this is a very significant development, and it's not 1 crore worth of compensation that you can claim. It is 1 crore worth of service or good that you have purchased and you have paid consideration of. Your compensation could be any amount, right? So I think this is one very key step that the government has taken, which is increase the pecuniary jurisdiction, as it is called, the amount that can be claimed before your local consumer forum, which is your district consumer forum. So these are the 2-3 things which I feel make life easier for consumers under the consumer protection law.
Okay, so it's definitely become very easy, because today if you have a complaint against a product, or whatever it is, firstly, you can file a complaint online. You can do so using a simple form, and if you are savvy with documentation, etc., you don't even necessarily need a lawyer. Though of course, if you would like to avoid the whole hassle of documentation, it's recommended that you do appoint a lawyer for yourself. But yeah, they've tried to make the entire process of filing a complaint as simple as possible, and that makes it possible for you as well to do so yourself. You can do so online. You just have to fill out a web form. And also additionally, the amount, usually a compensation claim in excess of 20 lakh rupees had to be taken to a higher consumer forum, but now they have hiked that amount to 1 crore rupees. And when I say 1 crore rupees, I mean if the value of the goods or services you've purchased is 1 crore rupees, not the compensation amount. So earlier, like Anay mentioned, what used to happen is that even if let's say your compensation claim was more than 20 lakh rupees, but you just wanted to avoid the hassle of reaching that level of legalities, you would just demand a lower compensation amount just so that you can go to your local consumer forum. But now they've hiked it all the way to 1 crore rupees worth of goods and services. But Anay, that brings me to another question. Do our local consumer forums have the kind of bandwidth to handle so many cases? I mean, here you've said that the limit is 1 crore worth of goods and services. I mean, the battery of complaints that will be there in the below 1 crore figure is definitely going to be huge. So will our local consumer forums have that kind of infrastructure to handle so many cases?
I think this is a practical question. The government is definitely trying to step up the game and put in place the right appointments and ensure that even if there is, let's say, a barrage of complaints, there are people who can address and sort of resolve consumer disputes. What the government has done, and I think this is relevant for everybody to know, is that it has put in place a separate alternative dispute resolution mechanism, which in simple English would be out of court settlement, right? So if, let's say, everybody goes to court and says, please give me this amount of money, if the court does not have the capacity to handle it, and if the case is open and shut, typically the court now has an option to actually refer the matter for what is called as a mediation, right? Which is where there are mediators, there are professionals who can then do what is called as an out of court settlement. So they can resolve, both sides can sit together, they can discuss, and they can agree on a certain number. And if that certain number is agreeable to everybody, that can then be taken as a binding decision of the court, and the matter can get over then. the court has also tried to do, they have anticipated that this could increase the workload at the district level itself, right? And it was not as if earlier there was a problem. There were some practical reasons because of which the matters used to go on for some time. What now under the new law, what has happened is that they have put timelines to certain things. So for example, let's say because of the barrage, because of the number of complaints that come before the consumer court is not able to, let's say, admit or let's say hear a petition in time. They've said that, okay, if you cannot hear a complaint within 21 days, it will be deemed to have been admitted. So they have created such provisions, such deeming fictions, because of which the matter is going to at least move. It is not going to get stuck.
Unfortunately, Anay, we're a bit short in time, so I'll have to just... Anay, we are a bit short in time, so I'll just have to interrupt you right there. But yes, we got your point. The government, of course, will be working on how to, go about taking some pressure off the infrastructure. You mentioned a few points. But, Anay, thank you so much for joining us today on the Money Show and, explaining the entire act for all of the viewers, for, all the buyers and customers as well out there. I think a big takeaway is the fact that it regulates e-commerce transactions, and for you as well to file a complaint now, it's become very easy. You can just do so via an online web form. For many of you, you may not even need a lawyer if you are savvy with documentation. Okay, for now, we will take a very short break right here on the show. But when we return, we will be addressing our Spend with TMS segment. We will be talking about the whole host of new phone launches last week. Stay tuned.